Hey everybody! Okay, it's time to actually do the live, what I've been sitting here all day trying to actually do, which is do the massive new sanctions on Iran in response to the 12 missile bombs. This actually, the huge sanctions goes ahead and kind of confirms what I was saying, is that it wasn't actually set up between Trump and Iran. Iran did not call Trump and say, how do we step down from this? I don't think Iran ever would be like, hey, let me go ahead and not kill anyone. That'll save us face in front of our people. That didn't make Iran look good in front of anybody. So it's pretty obvious. No, Iran really did try to hit our people and take a ton of people out. It was a really big hit for America to go and take out one of their big leaders. It was really targeted. It's a big thing. It really doesn't, to them, it really makes them look weak in front of their people. They really are. This is, as President Trump said, he's going back all the way to 1979. This is something that really should have been done back in 1979 when they took over the American embassy and took all those hostages. All we did back then was rescue the hostages. That's it. Nothing else. That's a major, that's it. Point, set, match. And then, in also what happened was, I was writing about on Twitter, anyway, so I'm going to continue on. Let's do the reaction to what's going on here. I started to react to it on Twitter. I was like, I can't write fast enough. So I'm going to do my reactions here. I know I need to get reaction video software and I don't have the time. Like, I would love to do that with you. I have the ideas now. I actually have idea what software I want to use. I'm trying to get the time. So just bear with me as I do this and I'll get there with you. So anyway, this is the White House press conference on the new sanctions as of, what day is today? It is January 10th, 2020. And so let's see if I can get the volume up on this as high as I can go. All right, let's see it. It started and I was like, oh, this is so huge.
Thank you for being here today.
So that's Steve Mnuchin. For those of you guys don't know, that's Steve Mnuchin. And next to him is Secretary Pompeo. And I don't remember Steve Mnuchin's title. I'm sorry, I should know it. But he's in the cabinet. I know that.
Make a brief comment before.
Dang it. Secretary of the Treasury. It's kind of a big thing. Okay, so they're having the Secretary of the Treasury announce this. I hate Wikipedia. That's how you know they work for the British Crown, when Wikipedia actually says that he's a banker first. And I'm just kind of like, your Archbishop of England, the Archbishop of England was an oil tycoon, and working at the UN. Like, I don't even want to hear it. The Queen of England assigned an oil tycoon to be the Archbishop of the Church of England, to go to every single church site on earth. I'm like, what kind of game chess pieces, what kind of people did you want to put in? Like, are you joking? Like, what kind of cabinet do you think you need to stack up with, in order to meet the rest of the leaders of the world head on? When you go in to meet a church leader and it turns out they were an oil tycoon. Are you kidding? It's like 3-4 lines down and it's like, oh, and by the way, they just happen to be the Secretary of the Treasury. They're on the President's Cabinet of the United States of America. And they say it 12 lines down. Totally anti-American. It's amazing. So world order is literally Great Britain versus America, and our entire online world of Wikipedia and Google, Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is Great Britain. That's why they have 230 protection. Congress handed over and gave them protections. Oh my God, I'm never going to get through this. Hi, Mnuchin.
We talk about Iran sanctions.
So the reason the Secretary of the Treasury is doing it, not Secretary Pompeo is doing it, is because it's sanctions. And sanctions are things that stop Treasury Department actions, like banking actions. So it kind of makes sense now, actually, that a banker would be in charge of the Secretary of the Treasury. That actually makes sense now because they know the banking system. Never really got that before. All right.
So everybody saw that the Dow hit 29,000. The president's economic plans are clearly working. We're looking forward to the China signing, USMCA, and a very strong economy this year.
Yeah, I don't care about the Dow. I don't really give a crap about the Dow. You know what I do care about is that Ohio had its best economic year since statehood, since Ohio became a state. Congratulations, Ohio. Your very best economic year in the history of being a state. Go, Ohio. Congratulations. I'm sorry to say, New York, your governor has not worked with the president, so you still have taxes at 50% higher than they actually could be. But Ohio has been working with the president, and they have seen their best economic year since becoming a state. That's pretty impressive.
This year. As previously announced by the president, we are announcing additional sanctions against the Iranian regime as a result of the attack on U.S. and allied troops. First, the president is issuing an executive order authorizing the imposition of additional sanctions against any individual owning, operating, trading with, or assisting sectors of the Iranian.
Okay, I'll rewind a little bit, but what I thought about this was interesting is that when they said sanctions, I was like, oh, they're going back to the sanctions route. And I remember thinking, because this up to this point, I have seen just this first part. I was like, sanctions, we're going back to economic sanctions. I was like, what is there left to sanction? They have sanctioned the House on everything. They've sanctioned all the way up all the military leaders, up to the Ayatollah, who has $200 billion, right? And the press didn't like that very much because that's who pays them a lot of money, right? But sanction the Ayatollah, $200 billion. Then they started sanctioning the judges and those judges' kids' passports so that they can't take classes in America anymore, thank goodness, or whatever. And I was like, what do they have left to sanction? Like, I find that amazing. They're like still things to sanction. I was like, what the heck do they have left to sanction in Iran? I was like, really, what is there left to sanction? Now, keep in mind, yesterday, President Trump made a big speech, or 2 days ago, President Trump made a big speech that said, I'm calling on the UK, Germany, and France, and China and Russia, but I mean, we both know China and Russia aren't going to step it up. But I'm calling on the UK, Germany, and France to step it up and stop backing them economically, which basically means those German industries to stop backing Iran. What is he talking about? He's specifically talking about there are specific industries that back Iran. Those are BASF, which does mining production, oil production, pharmaceutical production, but mostly mining, which is oil, like any kind of gold, copper, and Iran has a lot of mining production. They use children. It's really, really sad. They do a lot of kids. They do a lot of mining production, and then a lot of oil production. So that's BASF on the one hand. And then on the other hand, they have Krupp Steel that does all the steel production. And then the UK is the one that financed that. The UK bank, the royal family's bank, is the one that financed that. And that we know that's the Rothschild bank that hides it in between. The Rothschild bank, which has the royal Queen Victoria's seal that's on the Rothschild bank. It's actually Queen Victoria and Prince Albert's seal that's on the Royal Rothschild bank and gave them their seal. So that's the family that does all the banking and does it all. So we know that's the in-between. And so that's who they're calling on. Anyway, so let's go. Those are the industries he called on 2 days ago. So when you hear Newt Gingrich, he said this. Newt Gingrich has actually said, well, there are certain companies in Europe who are not obeying the sanctions, all these sanctions on Iran. He said there are certain companies in Europe, there are certain globalist companies who aren't obeying the sanctions in Iran. And I was like, why won't you name them? Why won't you say it's BASF? Why won't you say it's Krupp Steel? Why won't you say it's BMW? Why won't you say it's Volkswagen? Why won't you say it's Siemens? So that people know who not to invest in, who not to buy. So on my feed, on my Twitter feed, at Book of Katherine, Katherine, I can say my own name. That was actually really hard to do. Oh, I need to get used to doing that again. Oh, I gave myself a heart hit. I'm going to press play. Woo! Still healing from concussion.
Text of the owning, operate position. First, the president is issuing an executive order authorizing the imposition of additional sanctions against any individual owning, operating, trading with, or assisting sectors of the Iranian economy, including...
Okay, so any individual contacting with Iran, that means it's no longer Iran. The president has just started sanctioning people outside of Iran. That's what that means. On my Twitter feed, I was like, the president just went after BASF, Krupp Steel, the UK, and Germany. What that means is that the president gave 2 days. This is now the 10th. 2 days ago, on the 8th, the morning of the 8th, we were hit on the 7th in Iraq, in Baghdad. More than 12 ballistic missiles came hailing down on us. If we had not gotten that defense system, Defense spending. That's why it's called defense spending, to defend ourselves. Because we had defense spending and were able to defend ourselves, we got away clean, didn't get hit, but more than 12 ballistic missiles fell the heck on our head. President Trump came out the next morning and said, thank goodness no one got hurt, but I am calling on the UK and Germany and France to now step it up and decide who they are for. UK sent down a ton of Royal Navy ships, but did you notice none of those headlines actually said which side they were for? They actually named Iran in the headlines. They didn't say anything about America. In fact, they didn't even mention the fact that America had been bombed in the headlines. They mentioned the fact that Al-Qassam, they mentioned Soleimani in the headlines. So I actually read the article as they were going down there for Iran. And when you watch the Royal Navy, like, training videos, like their recruiting videos, it says nothing about defending freedom, nothing about defending the rights of people worldwide. Says nothing about that. It could be very much like defend our lands and our taking of land rights, defend slavery worldwide. It doesn't say anything about not doing that. It says nothing about defending freedom or personal liberty worldwide. Nothing. I don't know when that's been a British value. I don't know when anyone won that. We're going to have to really look into it and see, because they won little things for the island of Britain, not for its colonies. So now we hear the president and his group of people go outside, which means he gave them 2 days and they didn't. I mean, obviously this is a big drop. What that told me was he gave them 2 days to respond and they must not have responded very well. He must have said, I give you 2 days. He's been calling on them for a while. Now, this is big. We just got missiles dropped on us. He was like, that's it. What is it that I'm calling on you? And now he's like, I'm not playing games anymore. Fine, you're not going to do it. Now the sanctions go on you guys. Forever, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't penalized anyone but Iran. So all these sanctions have been going on, and all these international companies, BASF, Krupp Steel, they've just been ignoring the sanctions and going along with Iran as if the sanctions don't exist, letting them commit horrible crimes against humanity, child slavery and everything, and like shooting people in the head for gathering in the streets. They've just been ignoring that. Britain's been ignoring that. Germany's been ignoring that. France has been ignoring that. Completely ignoring it, right? Poland was ignoring that. Poland has made a 180. Thank you, Poland. So this has been very, very interesting. So now they're saying, now individuals, we can sanction individuals. That's a big deal, who work with Iran. That now means people outside of Iran. So,
of additional sanctions is issuing an executive order authorizing the imposition of additional sanctions against any individual owning, operating, trading with, or assisting sectors of the Iranian economy, including construction, manufacturing, textiles, and mining.
Textiles, mining, construction, manufacturing. Do you know what that means? I mean, I really want to tell you when it says Iranian sectors of mining, textiles, manufacturing. That means individuals. That means the people. He's not sanctioning the companies there. He's sanctioning the individuals who own a stake in those companies. I'm pretty sure he just he might have just gone after the crown. He might have just sanctioned the crown of England. In fact, he might have just sanctioned his boys to go find out who owns a stake. Here's what I mean is when it says in those sectors. So if they have mining in Iraq, let's say BASF has a mining company in Iraq. It used to be that they would just be like, okay, the Iraqi bankers have sanctions and they can't move their money around. Now, BASF is still mining in Iraq. Now, anyone who owns that mine outside of Iraq is getting sanctioned. But not just the people who own that mine, the people who invest. It says anyone who's profiting off that mine. And not just the mining, the textile, any sort of sector, anyone involved. That's China. That's anyone who has any kind of company in Iran. That's every royal out there. That's every royal monarch out there.
Let me be construction, manufacturing, textiles, and mining. And let me be clear, these will be both primary and secondary sanctions.
Primary and secondary sanctions. That means it's not just BASF and the guys that you see going around saying, here, I have a BASF name tag. And that's not just the Rothschild Bank funding it, it's the guys behind. That's what they're saying. It goes deep. We are going after everyone who profits. Like it's the Soros, and it's no, like they're going into the shell companies, is what they're saying. Because they know the shell companies are the one who control what happens on those things. You know, like when Walmart says, okay, we contracted a company that owns the sweatshop, so we don't really have anything to do with the sweatshop, but yeah, we want you to get the cheapest labor power, so go use China as a sweatshop. They're saying, we're not just going to sanction you. Normally the sanctions would just hit the company that owns the sweatshops. And they would say, oh, you're in China, so it would get hit by the sweatshop, but it protect Walmart. And this government, this Trump is now saying, oh, no, we're not just going after you for owning the sweatshop, not just the contractor. We're now going primary and secondary up to Walmart. Ho ho.
The EO also allows us to designate other sectors in the future as Secretary Pompeo and me think is appropriate. Second, we are announcing 17 specific sanctions against Iran's largest steel and iron manufacturers, set 3 Seychelles-based...
Isn't that Krupp Steel? Okay, so we have got so far, let me see which industries we have so far. Okay, construction, manufacturing, textiles, and mining. And what they're saying is we reserve the right to go after others so far. Do you know what that means? What they're saying is we haven't touched the oil yet. Iran's biggest export is oil. BASF does all of these. Like BASF does all of these. And then they say, after they say, we reserve the right to go after others, then they say, by the way, and we're also going to do 17 other areas, such as steel. So construction are things like, cement, which is like the cheap stuff. They and mine, oh my God, like they are really going down. If you look into BASF and see how many industries, that's why they never come up. They're the world's largest chemical company. The reason they never come up is because they own a million different companies. They have BASF. Go ahead and look at Venezuela oil alone. They offer a million different types of oil production alone. So like Dow Chemical, it's all under just Dow Chemical. Not BASF. BASF has their vaccine, and then BASF has this, and then BASF has this, and then it has this chemical, this drug, and then it has this. There are 8 million different BASF corporations, and so it's like they have one head and then a million different satellites, and they never put it under a single name, so that you never see that it's the world's biggest company. They're very, very smart. I mean, that's exactly how Great Britain runs it. That's how they run the Commonwealth. Great Britain just says, oh, we're Great Britain. We aren't the line. They didn't name anything else Great Britain. They did the same thing with the Commonwealth flag. The Commonwealth flag used to have the Great Britain flag on all the flags. And then they changed all the flags back to have the main flag. And then they have like their little flag on it just small. So all the Commonwealth flags look like it's their own nation. But in reality, they're still a Commonwealth. Look at the old Commonwealth flags. They didn't leave the Commonwealth. They just gave them their old flag to look like the appearance of having independence when they don't. Very, very tricky. Very, very tricky.
Entities and a vessel involved in the transfer of products. As a result of the entity steel, we are announcing 17 specific sanctions against Iran's largest steel and iron manufacturers, set 3 Seychelles-based entities, and a vessel involved in the transfer of products. As a result of the...
Why do I have a feeling that that's going to be Britain? Oh, I don't know. We'll have to look at... That might be China. I know China's really helping Iran out. This all is stuff outside. They're like a vessel. This is all stuff literally outside Iran. They're saying who's helping Iran. 2 days earlier, President Trump said, I'm calling on these countries to stop helping. And then they're like, we're announcing 2 days later... We're announcing sanctions against these people who aren't helping. Now, I bet the sanctions that aren't hitting are from countries possibly who said, we'll help, we're with you. I bet you companies and stuff like that said we'll start obeying the sanctions. We'll start listening to the sanctions or whatever. Man, and all I have to say for those of you who are invested in this crap, invested in BASF and aren't invested in America, all I can say is I told you so. I told you, didn't I? Book of Katherine readers, Book of Katherine readers, I told you on Twitter, I told you how long ago I said, pull out of this crap, pull out of BASF, pull out.
These actions, we will cut off billions of dollars of...
Because all of this construction, they're going to have to go to U.S. They're going to have to go to U.S. They're going to have to go to U.S. steel. They're going to have to rely on U.S. steel.
Support to the Iranian regime. As a result of these actions, we will cut off billions of dollars of support to the Iranian regime, and we will continue our enforcement of other entities.
That's terrible. That tells you how much support is going by the UK, by Germany, by France, by China. Russia is billions of dollars of support just through industries, just through global companies supporting them, actually running their companies within Iran, a place with no human rights, no rights for the people. That means the UK and Germany have billions of dollars worth of industries in Iran where people don't have rights.
Third, we are taking action against 8 senior Iranian officials who advanced the regime's destabilizing activity and were involved in Tuesday's ballistic missile strike. Secretary Pompeo will comment more on this.
I'm like, how'd they know? How'd they know? How did they know? Man, they have good intelligence. How'd they know? They're getting better at intelligence gathering. Ooh.
Today's sanctions are part of our commitment to stop the Iranian regime's global terrorist activities.
By the way, one thing I want to say on that, when they ask, like, well, how did you know? How did you know? Why did you take out Soleimani? How did you know that he was going to attack? They're trying, that is literally Great Britain's regime trying to find out. I mean, actually, Secretary Pompeo said it. He's like, we have to protect how we get our information. And I was like, oh, that's what it's about. When they say, how did you know? What information did you find out? What information did you find out? They're trying to find out who leaked so they can kill him and take him out. Like, never, ever. And I'm always like, if it's the other side, when they're asking a question antagonistically, they're not asking it like a news source. When they're threatening you with their questions, like, how'd you know? When they don't just trust you, like you took out a terrorist, and they don't just trust you, then they're asking things for the other side. If they sound like the other side, if they sound like someone, they all sound like the other side. I'm like, never give them what they want. And now we're seeing the benefit of that. We know more about who planned the attack in the 12 ballistic bombs because we didn't cave into giving out information. We need to do more of that.
The president has been very clear. We will continue to apply economic sanctions until Iran stops its terrorist activities and commit that it will never have nuclear weapons. I'll now turn it over to Secretary Pompeo.
And this is what I mean about the president has been very good about dodging world wars. He's just, and no matter how aggressive Iran has been, he has managed to keep us out of war. Somehow he has come out seeming very strong, even though they have hit us with 12 missiles. They end up looking extremely weak. We end up looking extremely strong because they hit us with 12 missiles and no one died on our side. They end up looking weak. We end up looking strong, and yet he's hitting them with economic sanctions. So we're not using massive weapons. They use the biggest weapon. They end up looking the worst. He is literally playing this amazing game where it's just been very, very impressive the way that he has kept the violence down and the war down, if that makes sense. I mean, troops have been sent, but that's it. Troops have been sent. That doesn't mean fighting has occurred. Big, big, big difference.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. Today, President Trump is delivering on the pledge that he made. The day after Iran attacked American forces in Iraq, there will be a series of new sanctions Secretary Mnuchin just mentioned 8 senior Iranian officials that are responsible for the regime's violence both at home and abroad. We're striking at the heart of the Islamic Republic's inner security apparatus. These sanctions targets include the Secretary of the Supreme National Council and the commander of the Basij forces.
That should always, now I'm starting to notice that. Supreme National Council. How often the Iranian regime has titles like Supreme in it, when Queen Elizabeth has the same thing. The Supreme Leader. She also has title of Supreme. That should be very concerning to you.
That's the regime's brute squad, which has in the last few months killed approximately 1,500 Iranians who were simply demanding freedom. Our action also targets other senior leaders close to the Ayatollah. They've carried out his terrorist plots and destabilizing campaigns across the Middle East and around the world. They've employed soldiers across the region's battlefields. They've trained militias in Iraq, Syria, and elsewhere in the arts of domestic repression. Today they're accountable for murder and mayhem. The goal of our campaign is to deny the regime the resources to conduct its destructive foreign policy.
Okay, so they are slowly turning the ship away. I don't know if you can hear this, but they are slowly turning the ship away from Iran versus America and their conflict, and slowly turning the ship. I'm realizing I'm thinking in my head and not telling you what I'm thinking. Slowly turning the ship back to Iran and its people, and like Puya's death that I talked about in December, and the 1,500 people who died. They're slowly turning it back to where it was before, which was sanctions, and why we're doing the sanctions for the Iranian people and the rights that they're asking for, and the horrific crimes against humanity that are happening there, and the terrorism they're committing. And what happened, like November and December, the protests are ongoing. And remember, these protests are not violent. All they're doing is protesting in the streets and asking for freedom. Freedom to not wear their headdress. Also, freedoms like if they go into the street and protest, they're just shot in the head, or they go into the street and protest, they're jailed for 10 years. They do simple things, or they post a picture on Instagram, they go to jail. Like very, very simple thing in Islam. They're very like Islam. They don't necessarily believe. You look it up. There are entire regimes and entire in the Middle East and across the Islamic world that taking a picture is known as something. I don't know the word is haram or sinful. In the like Christendom in the world. Gosh darn, I've been studying too much now. I'm like got all my words mixed up. So anyway, but the thing is that for very basic things, they have huge horrific things like, you know, whippings and lashings and everything like that. And the people are protesting and saying they want freedom again, especially in a world with like social media. They want to be able to go on social media like the rest of the world and breathe and have basic human rights. We are in a world of basic human rights, especially when their leaders get to enjoy it. Their leaders get to enjoy basic human rights. Their leaders get to go out and travel and like use the internet and use phones and things like that. It's just the people cannot, because they want the people being slaves in order to do these things for textile and labor. It makes them they just want slaves. They have slaves. It's a slave class. They don't want to be a slave class. The slaves are rising up, basically. The slaves are rising up. They want to be freed, just like the American Revolution. They are having the Iranian Revolution. And America always supports any type of, you know, revolution of when slaves go against their masters, right? Which is why I cannot believe, their American Black communities are not actually backing the Iranians. I just cannot believe that. I'm just kind of like, don't you of all people should understand. And I know some do, but others just don't. I don't understand it. They want to fight so much, but I'm like, fight for those with your same background. So, anyway, I lost my train of thought. But they're slowly turning the ship around to that again and turning the thing to those abuses. These 8 men not only had to do with the planning of that 12 bombs, but notice Pompeo's actual words are like, look at what they've done to the Iranian people. Look at, like, remember, they killed Puya. Remember what they did here. Remember what they've done to the Iranian people. They could be focusing on the Americans and what they did to America, but they're not. He's using the words and turning it back to the Iranian people and their rights. It's very smart, because what that does is it lowers the rhetoric Iran versus America, and oh, we have ships meeting in Baghdad, and oh, we're doing this, and it's not. It's saying no, we're focusing on Iran and this regime and the people and what this is happening here, and all we want is the people to have their say, and we have this brute force, and then he has this amazing term he called the arts of oppressive, being an oppressive government, of being an oppressive guard, and that's what they're doing, is that they're not letting anyone gather and things like that. And I would say to you this, I'm worn out and I can't do anymore, but as I watch this, I suddenly realize why Iran isn't free. I'm like, so why aren't the Iranian people being free? Like, why doesn't Black America, why don't all these activist groups actually get behind Iran? Like, they do understand Iran and all these Agenda 2030. I mean, we've learned, like, there is an Agenda 2030 in the Middle East. Look it up. Agenda 2030, Middle East. There is, and there's pro-woman rights. They have a UN woman. So if the UN is in the Middle East, if it's in Iran, if it's in Iraq, and it's on all the university campus, if it's the UN pummeling all these black students, if it is George Soros funding all these black universities and all these black student unions to go forward and do all this fighting, and all of this getting into officers and saying that we're all about rights and we want restitution, everything. And then why is it that if it's over here and it's over here, why aren't they coming together while they're both screaming for rights? And we now know why. Well, we know that who's funding them both, Soros at the top. At the bottom, we know that it's owned and run by these companies. And these companies, right at the bottom, are in Iran, making money off of these people. And in Iran, I mean, what it's doing is it's causing a lot of unrest and causing us to send a lot of ships over there. And that does a lot of military spending, which makes these companies a lot of money at the top. Like Cheryl Atkinson says, the government, like the big kahootas, the military companies are in it just as much as the big left and right companies are in it at the same. They're the exact same people, she said. So that's why reading Breitbart is exactly the same. If you look up Breitbart or if you look up Larry Elder, I read about Democrats just as much on their feed as I read about it on Steve Colbert's feed. But it just suddenly strikes me that, yeah, the people who are funding, those like the churches, the black churches or whatever that do all the activism or whatever, the people who are funding that, they would lose billions in Iran if the Iranian people got their rights back. Just like they lost billions by losing the plantations in the South. Same families. Interesting. All right, let's try and watch a little more.
We want Iran to simply behave like a normal nation.
I hate it when he says that. Sorry, Secretary Pompeo. I should be more formal, but I'm always like, every time he says that when I watch with my friends. And I watch with some pretty high up people. So I'm used to just being like right in front of high up people. So I'm used to doing it. I shouldn't do that. But I'm like, why do you keep saying that? I wish you would stop announcing in front of world leaders, we want Iran to be a normal country. I'm like, what is that? Iran, the Iranian leadership, Islam, they do not believe they're normal. They believe they're better than everyone. Islam literally believes they're better than everyone. When you say that, it actually will only make them want to fight you more. It will make them chant death to America even more. If you say we want them to be a country equal with the rest of the world, if we want them, I see why that would work, because then it would be like give them equal nuclear power. If you just say we want them to have equal rights, just as the rest of the world deserves. We want Iran to have a working democracy, just like the rest of the world deserves. But a normal country, what is that? Is there a normal country anymore? But just, it would be nice if there wasn't slavery. I don't know. Perhaps just a peaceful country. That would be, I don't know. I'd come up with something. But normal, I'm like, I feel, every time I hear him say a normal country, I'm like, literally, Islam runs, and it shows you that the Crown created this. Literally, Islam runs on the idea that you're special. just like Prince Albert and Queen Victoria created socialism, that entire idea runs on the idea that you think you're special. Identity politics runs on the idea that you're special, that others are never equal with you, that you are special. That's why the German Socialist Workers' Party said that all of the, propaganda in the film industry would just say that you can make your own way, that nothing can ever stop you. You're the greatest power in this world. Everyone is just God. Tell the other person that they're God, but also tell this person that they're God. Just make them all think that they're God, right? And thereby destroying all the rights, because every right in this world, every single freedom in this world that was ever created in the last 2,000 years was created on the idea that there was God. I've been finding that out. That was all based on something saying that there was a God that gave people rights. People were created by gods, and therefore, or a God, and therefore they were given a right. And so the people agreed and said, okay, we're made special, and therefore we deserve rights because we're made in the image of God. Because we're made in the image of God, we deserve all these rights. And once you take that away and say, no, just I'm God as we are, and then say everyone's an animal, and animalism is God, and oh God, I'm getting into a bunch of other stuff.
I believe the sanctions that we impose today further that strategic objective. Our campaign is composed of diplomatic, economic components that have deprived the regime of billions in revenue that the regime has used to fuel death and destruction across the Middle East and all across the world. Sadly, the previous administration had opened up revenue streams for Iran. But under our administration, oil revenues are down by 80%, and Iran cannot access roughly 90% of its foreign currency reserves.
80% is a big increase. Down 80% is an increase. That's even increased more. That's really, really big. That's big. That's a good number. That's fantastic. The reason it's still going is because China is still trading, but even that's been down. That's fantastic.
And not even 2 weeks ago, President Rouhani of Iran admitted that our sanctions have cost Iran over $200 billion in lost foreign income and investment.
That's not true. That's not true. It's more than that. It's more than that. They're definitely, just like China lies, they lie. It's way more than that, especially when the actual guy owns $200 billion in wealth. It's definitely more than that. Easily in just the last couple of years. It's probably in the trillions. But their biggest people, it should be higher. Like, it definitely should be higher. An oil king cannot go from, they lost 80% of the oil. Does that make sense? They were the world's oil center, and then they lost it all. That's kind of a big deal.
As long as Iran's outlaws' ways continue, we will continue to impose sanctions. Finally, I want to reiterate President Trump's concern for Americans and dual national citizens detained inside of Iran. Iran knows these individuals have committed no crime. They know the charges against them are fake. We will do all that we can to get each of them returned home safely.
Oh, did you just say? He just said, okay, I'm glad we waited till the end. So we just found out that all these people with dual citizenships in Iran, let me just ask, why are people in Iran with dual citizenships? Like, why are people there? Why is anyone at this time in Iran there? Why are they there? Why is anyone in Iran at this point in time? Unless it's to do business. And now the Iranian government is just like, what the heck? And they're keeping them. They're actually locking them down. I'm sure there are some stupid Christians that are like, oh, it's in this 1040 window. We have to go preach the gospel or something and whatever. I know there's these ideas or whatever. And I'm like, there are other parts of the world that you could go. Like, seriously, like, there are Christians leaving that area. Christians have been to that. Christianity was birthed in that area, for heaven's sakes. That's not, the 1040 window was where it was born. Go elsewhere if you want what you want. Are you crazy? Obviously, the British Crown is like, go to the 1040 window. Because they do the opposite. It's so funny. I learned that British Crown is actually one that separated out the boundaries of Jerusalem that we talked about. It wasn't Islam. I was like, oh, it wasn't the Jews or Islam. It was the British Crown. I was like, holy crap. I was like, that's even more proof that it's like not that they really aren't like the Roman Catholic Church isn't really, or that they aren't even Protestants, Oh, honey, we learned up so much. Okay, so basically that was a good drop in the... Oh gosh, there's more of
knows
this.
these individuals have committed no crime. They know the charges against them are fake. We will do all that we can.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little thing of like, yeah, we'll do all that we can, but like, we know it's fake. That's a nice little thing out to the public, but it's kind of like... I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Oh, that's for behind the scenes, I guess. Wow, lots of thoughts.
Each of them returned home safely to their families.
Wow.
That will take just a few questions.
Oh, it's questions. Oh, who cares about questions? It's just basically Iran asking questions out. It's Iran and Great Britain. Who wants to hear any of that? So, oh, very interesting. Iran and Great Britain. Oh, I don't listen to any of those things. So anyway, that was very, very interesting. I'm sorry if I stopped it so much. Some people don't like that, but I'm like, well, if you don't like the stopping and pausing, then go watch the actual video. Anyway, so that's the way I have to do for reaction videos for now. Very, very interesting. Ooh, very, very. I have to go find out. What I want to know is what's the big tanker? Like, what's that one big tanker? And what's the biggest steel and iron industry there? Like, is that Krupp Steel? Like, I know it's Krupp Steel's biggest in the world. Oh, this is so fascinating. I have got to find out. Did you know the other thing we learned today? We learned this from Roseanne Barr. She taught us 2 days ago as well. She's teaching us about Purim and Esther. And she said that Iran actually was named Persia. Iran is actually Persia. And they renamed it. The Nazi Party actually renamed it with Islam, the Aryan race in Farsi. So Iran is actually, that's how we say it in English. But in Farsi, it means Aryan, for Aryan race. Remember I told you that the Nazis, remember I told you Hitler and the Ottoman Empire, they worked together? And that's what I mean. The Great Britain, in every single world war, in every war going hundreds of years back, the Germans have always worked. Like, they have been working with the Ottoman Empire, and I'm just like, you look back and I'm just like, I can't tell when the Roman Empire ever broke up. Like, there's so many unions. It goes so far back. It's very interesting if you look it up. There's been little breakaways, but when you look at the overreaching, like, I kind of laugh at the one, what is it called now, that I reckon, Tragedy and Hope. I laugh at that now, almost. I see people looking at a lot of small things and a lot of small numbers and saying, oh, this little happened here and oh, this little happened there. And I'm just kind of like, did anyone look at, like, the overall picture? There's people throwing things on a chessboard, but did anyone follow the money on the overall picture overhead, looking up like a hawk from the sky? Looking like a hawk from the sky, when you look up over it and look down at the map and you just see it all all laid out before you, it's a very different picture. Very, 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 very different picture. Everything doesn't look so accidental or coincidental. Everything starts just like, for example, in World War II, when the British just, oh, look, why didn't they hit the British if the Japanese hated Japan so, if the Japanese hated Great Britain so much, if Great Britain really wasn't with the Axis, if it really was an ally with America, then why didn't Japan just hit Britain? Britain was right there. Japan could have wiped Britain out. Britain was right there in China. Remember, they have their whole palace built on it. Great Britain was right there in China. Why did Japan fly its butt all the way across the Pacific to hit America? It had no backup there. It had no islands to have a backup on. It pretty much knew all of its bombers would be knocked out of the sky once it just flew all the way over to this little island just to like, hey, why didn't it take out Great Britain? It could have flattened, it had its whole entire thing there. It could have just flattened Great Britain right there and hit one of the allies. We weren't an ally with China. Why didn't Japan just go over and just go stomp on an ally if it wanted to attack the allies? Why not? During the entire World War II, Japan murdered everyone in that area. Did a great job just murdered everyone in that area. Never even breathed. Started to finally come up the river to Great Britain. And then all of a sudden, oops, look, the war was declared over. 3 armies meet at once and just, what do? Eat dinner together? Just start looking at things overhead and it doesn't look so accidental. You start seeing this crown worn and the names passed down, Caesar Augustus, Caesar Augustus, Augustus Caesar. You start seeing that they wore them. You start seeing that the families, I mean, the fact that we think that a family, when things that emperors learn to change their ways, technology changes. All right, so the Roman emperors had a Colosseum and they ruled Rome that way. Why would we assume that they'd always rule it that way? Technology changes, people change, things change, society changes. A whole new religion, a radical religion came through. Why wouldn't they change the way they do things? You know, but certain things haven't changed. Like certain styles haven't changed. You know, this serpentine way of like never put things in writing. Certain things of always lying, and certain things of having a shell corporation, being in control, but never saying you're in control so that no one knows how big you are. Those are patterns of rule that have stayed and have not left. All right. Love you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed that reaction. And I better go lay down now. All right. Love you. Bye. Oh, donate. Donate down below, please. Wow, I'm really tired. If you could donate down below, $1 a month, that would be really, really great. Just PayPal. Click and just, it doesn't give any, it can be 0 to whatever, of course, but if you could just donate $1, or if you want to pay ahead for the whole year, it's January, you can just do your $12 for the year, and then every time I say donate, you can just be like, peace out, chick, I did, peace out, chick, I did, right? All right, love you guys so much. Bye.